Taking a look at two knives today that appear to be Chris Reeve Large Inkosis. Well, one of them is real and one of them is a counterfeit. Let's see if, from a brief look, if any of you can tell. And if you thought that this was the counterfeit, you were correct. It's hard to tell just from looking at these, but there are very slightly different sized bits on the hardware there. And if you did get a peek at that oversized washer on the real Inkosi, that is a giveaway as well. Of course, they don't try too hard to hide it with the VG10 on the blade. That is a dead giveaway. But otherwise, they're both titanium frame lock knives on washers with a ceramic detent ball in the lock bar. And while they are similar, they are still very different. But they are, on the surface level, at a very quick glance, impressively similar. Now, this one has been beat up a little bit, and I received this one just for the purpose of doing some comparisons. So I also plan on marking this in some way to denote that it is a clone. I tried getting a Dremel and scratching out the Idaho and Idaho made, but I wasn't making a lot of progress into that titanium, but I'm going to find a way to really mar this thing beyond repair, just so in case down the road there is no ever confusing this with the real thing, just from in case it falls in the wrong hands of somebody who is unsuspecting. I just wouldn't want it to be sold or somebody think they were getting something that they weren't. So I'm going to essentially destroy it being considered a fake or a clone or counterfeit for those that are unsuspecting. But anyway, let's take a look at some of the surface level differences beyond just the materials. So these, of course, are different blade shapes. So that is going to change some of the measurements. But the main measurement that I was curious about these was the thickness behind the edge. Now, I'm not sure if the Large Inkosi stock from Chris Reeve is that much thinner behind the edge than the drop point, but this one certainly is much, much thinner behind the edge on this counterfeit. Let's see, 11.5 thousandths there. And on this one, on the authentic, we've got 23. Let's see, let me get that right on there, make sure I'm in the right position. 23 thousandths. Yep. Significantly thicker behind the edge on this guy. Action. So this one, the smooth hydraulic action, not quite the Sebenza action. It doesn't have that that bushing to keep everything uniform, but this was tuned to still have some very smooth action and to be able to flick out as well. This one's action is still very smooth, but it's not as consistent. But you can still flick it, and this one you can actually begin to drop shut it as well. It's got some different tolerances, different washers, so the action is a little bit different. And this is just the clip that came on this guy. It is loose. There is no tightening it down. Just with that single point on there, it doesn't fit in that slot quite as well. So the overall thickness of the blade, I think, was very slightly different on these. Let's see, 14.2. And on the authentic, we've got 13.9. So not anything too significant of a difference there. Nothing that anybody would really be able to pick up or notice. But these are shockingly similar. Given their price difference. But one of the things that you get, other than just a couple of copied materials thrown together, is consistency, quality of the steel, and warranty. So consistency. With these clones, you can look up and see online, there are whole forums dedicated to these. There are people who just are... will just collect and use the Chinese clones. And, if that's what you're into... so be it. As long as you're not distributing them as the real thing. I don't like that people are supporting the cloning industry, but there are still people out there who enjoy their knives that way. But it is very inconsistent. I've seen people where they would have to buy 2 or 3 before they get one that is close to the real thing. So with these being, I think, 60 or 70 bucks a pop. I'm not even sure how much these go for new. You're not guaranteed to get something that is actually quality, that's going to be solid, that's going to be consistent. And of course, if you do have any issues with it, well, you're stuck with a defective product. So let's take a look on the inside and see what these two look like here. All right. So we've got a similar construction. We've got the floating stop pin where it's only secured on one side. That's the same for both of them. Washers are different size on the washers. And I think the pivot holes, let's see, we can get a good read on those. .17. I mean, pretty dang close on the pivots. 2.5 on the barrel. 3.135. So very, very slight difference. So they're very similar. Hardware size. Of course, we've got the different washers. We'll take a look at the way that the ceramic ball is seated in that lock bar. Let's see. So it looks like a section is drilled out and it's pushed in. Now here it looks like they add on the Chris Reeve, they kind of crimp it in, it looks like, to give that ceramic ball some extra security there. So we see the counterfeit on the right and the authentic on the left. Interesting. I wonder if the counterfeit is that detent ball is less secure in there, and it's got a little less clearance. Let's see, we'll look at the clearance outside of it. Pretty dang similar. All right. So one of the other major things that you pay for when you're paying for a higher price knife, let's not get those mixed up, is the treatment of the steel. Now, at the end of the day, you want your cutting tool to be a good performing cutting tool, especially if you're going to spend that kind of money on it. Now, this says VG10. Somebody in a comment in a previous video mentioned that it's Chinese 10CR hardened to 59 or something like that. I've sharpened it a couple times and used it and touched it up, and I am pretty unimpressed by it. The action on the knife, the way it feels, is close enough. But the way that it actually performs as a cutting implement, even though it's thinner behind the edge, I mean, is unsatisfactory, especially compared to a Chris Reeve knife. I mean, it's just as good or in the same level as any other $30 knife you might get. So if you're going to spend $30 on a knife, well, you're not really going to spend $30 on one of these. You'll probably spend 70 or more, but I don't support the counterfeit industry. I don't think you should get them. And if you're going to pay $70 for a new knife, this isn't going to be a good performing knife for that. So let's take a look and actually see how the knife performs. So let's see if we can actually put some numbers to that performance. So first, let's get these back together. All right, so we're going to go ahead and do a test between the counterfeit and the authentic one. We're going to do the same thing we always do. We're going to take a couple tests beforehand, cut some paper, make sure it's all good and sharp. We'll do some testing on the best testing to get some before numbers, and then we will go cut 150 cuts on cardboard, 50 cuts on some sizzle rope, and take the tests on the best tester afterwards to check and see how, compare how those edges degraded with that use. You can shave very easily. And oh yeah, hair popping sharp. Now let's test the Magnacut. 147. All right, so we got an initial sharpness on the counterfeit of 140. And I'll throw up the initial average for the authentic one here. And let's go do some cutting and see how they fare. All right, so got done with the cutting test. Loses its bite pretty quickly. This steel, it did okay. It didn't do terrible. Did about what I expected to, given just the light use that I've given it in the last week or so. So we are still cutting magazine paper pretty good. It's not too it's a little rough, but it's actually not too bad at all. Still got a good bit of edge left there. It's definitely not shaving at all anymore, which is typical of these types of tests. So let's go ahead and put some numbers to this. All right, so on the Magnacut, the authentic Chris Reeve knife, we had an initial sharpness of 154 grams. After 150 cuts on cardboard, 50 cuts on the rope, we went up to 201, or an increase of just 47 grams of pressure to cut that line on average. For this VG10 on this clone, we started with an initial sharpness of 140, went up to 266, or an increase of 126 grams on average to cut that line. So we saw 3 times the edge retention on this steel than we would this. And this, we're not really sure what the toughness or corrosion resistance is, because we're not entirely sure that this is even VG10 steel. So now, don't go run out and get a clone. I wouldn't suggest it. It's, above all else, it's theft from intellectual property of a U.S. company. Say what you want about companies that charge as much as they do for the knives. You know, if you hate them that much, then don't buy a knife that's the exact copy of what they're doing if you really don't like them that much. But, you know, regardless of any of that, these, I want to say they're like $70 when you get them on like AliExpress or something like that. I don't know. That's not where I got this one. Again, I intend to mark this one in a way that makes it not appear as a Chris Reeve knife. And I did just get this for the purposes of doing this comparison. But if you're going to spend that much on a knife, there's plenty of other great options out there at that price where it's going to perform better. You're going to have a better knife. You'll have a knife that probably has a warranty. You're going to have a knife that's going to have more quality control and more consistency. You're going to be more likely to get something that you're actually going to be happier with, and you're going to have a more consistent experience with. So this, you know, they scanned one of these and was able to get the dimensions so they could cut it exactly out of titanium, but you know, that's all it is. This might as well just be a couple slabs of titanium and steel in the middle, which, I mean, if you want to get down to it, that's all this is too. But you know, you get what I'm saying. You're not getting the same level of performance, reliability, consistency, warranty, all those things that come with a more expensive knife. Not even a more expensive knife, an authentic knife, a knife that's coming from a real brand, from a real company with its own original design and production. But anyway, I hope you found these results interesting. I found them interesting, but not necessarily surprising. Thank you for watching.